You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Please join us at the Open Door. We discuss solidarity, subsidiarity, economic democracy, and nonviolence in light of Catholic social teaching. We explore how to move from discussion to political change. Culture and politics, to be sure, are interwoven, so we care deeply about education and the arts. Our questions often lead us to report on the projects and promise of the American Solidarity Party.
Welcome to the Open Door. Jim Hanink here with fellow panelist. Mario's having technical difficulties, sad to say, or as he would say, alas. So I'm here today with fellow panelist, singular, Valerie Niemeyer. Today we'll be discussing, if not all things literary, lots of things literary. Some people will no doubt wonder whether, as a naysayer claimed, Walker Percy was the last Catholic novelist. And an informal poll among us, our answer is no, we don't think so. So what's the range of literary? It includes, of course, nonfiction. It welcomes poets and dramatists. But what about bloggers and, worst case, podcasters? Just how ecumenical should we be? Our welcome guest is Karina Fabian. She is the new president of the Catholic Writers Guild, an association committed to the development of Catholic arts and letters. Let's first pray. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful and kindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and you shall renew the face of the earth. O God, who have taught the hearts of the faithful by the light of the Holy Spirit, grant that in the same Spirit we may be truly wise and ever rejoice in his consolation. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. Karina, if we may, could you fill us in about the checkered history? No, I won't say that. About the true history of the Catholic Writers Guild.
Oh, it's not checkered unless you just mean like we one step, and then get to do a bunch of jumps. So the Catholic Writers Guild was started in 2007. It was discussed a little bit earlier. This was back in the days of AOL and Yahoo groups, and a bunch of us were saying how much we needed something that would help us as Catholic writers to get our books known and to learn better. And we talked about it. And then about a half dozen of us said, why are we talking about it? We need to do something about it. So in 2007 is when we officially started the Catholic Writers Guild. And from there, we had those big jumps. We started our first online conference in 2008. It was probably the top, I would say it was the second conference ever held in an online venue. The first one was the Muse It Up conference. The next year, we had a live conference, and that was with the help of the Catholic Marketing Network. They sponsored the spaces for us and allowed us to have an actual live conference with presenters, pitch sessions, and also got to take advantage of the trade room floor for book signings and things. It was fantastic. Shortly thereafter, one of our members said, hey, can we do some writing retreats? So now we offer a writing retreat every other year, sometimes two. We had two this last year. Bookstore owners decided that they needed something, or we decided that we wanted to help bookstore owners by providing them a vetting service. So our seal of approval, which looks at books for their Catholic content as well as their editorial quality was started in around 2010. And that's a service specifically for bookstore owners where they can get a book, it's got the seal of approval, and they know, hey, this is one that I can feel confident selling in my store. Jumping ahead, we're now 500 members strong. We are an international guild. We're everywhere from England to Australia. I think we have somebody in Malta, a couple of people in Africa even. And we have a very active group on our Heartbeat chat room. Heartbeat is kind of like a private Facebook on steroids. So it's an excellent place for us to be able to get together, to have threaded discussions, to have casual chats. We can offer courses there, set announcements. It's been a real godsend for us as far as communication. We have launched probably 50 or more careers just through the conferences and the pitch sessions. But I would say through our help and support, it's probably closer to 100 writers that have either gotten their start or gotten that jump to the next level thanks to the Guild. And I got to tell you, that's one of the things that makes me the happiest about what we're doing. So this year, we are looking to take the Guild to the next level. We want to get more members. We're trying to work on more marketing opportunities, making more connections. We've since moved our conference from the Catholic Marketing Network to the Association of Catholic Publishers. It's kind of a better fit for us because we have better access to the publishers and the editors right there. So for networking and things. And we've done that for a couple of years now. It's been terrific. And now we're talking to them about how we can make that partnership a little bit stronger. So that was a very big nutshell, but it was a nutshell.
You've got a juggernaut going.
We're trying. We really want this to be, big because it's amazing how many Catholics are out there that have a book in them. I mean, okay, the cliche is everybody has a book in them, but these are people who feel truly drawn, not just by their own ambitions or the stories in their heads, but by wanting to do something that pleases God. And that's what we're all about, is encouraging that in order to help spread the faith, both in fiction and nonfiction, because a lot of times fiction is what influences the culture. And we want to help them to bring that out in a way that can change the world.
Now, we always have a pop quiz, and usually it's much later in the show, much later.
Oh, no.
Now we're going to have the pop quiz right away. Is an autobiography fiction or nonfiction?
Well, I guess that depends on how big a story you're telling about your life. And if you're keeping it,
so you're going to take a case. You're going to take it case by case.
Yeah, if you're going to tell big fish stories, then you might be slipping into fiction. But I would think an autobiography should be nonfiction.
Well, you know,
there's
an important autobiography coming up, and some people will wonder whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Well, with that sly aside, I'm going to turn things over to our favorite fellow panelist, Valerie.
Well, are you writing an autobiography, Jim? I'm just really curious. I'm just going to come out and ask you. Pop quiz. Are you writing an autobiography?
Oh, there's a fellow from Argentina.
Ah, okay. Well, I'll be looking for you to write one someday too. I want to learn more about your life. Karina, we wanted to ask you, you're a self-described geek, teacher, humorist, and Miata driver. Before we started here, you said you met your husband. You charmed each other with puns. You sound like an interesting human. How did you come to be involved in the guild? It sounds like you were one of the co-founders, but is that
I was.
you could describe it? Yeah.
Deep back, go way back. It started with my husband and I on a date. We had two little kids at home, and we're real good communicators, so we already hash out all the family and finances and all that stuff. So when we were on dates, we would make up stories, and we made up this world with spacefaring nuns. I guess this universe was spacefaring nuns. And we wrote a couple stories in that, and I was looking for a place to publish them, and we made a couple of anthologies. And I was then like, okay, what do I do with these? I was brand new. I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know much about publishing other than I had found somebody to publish those anthologies. So I found the Yahoo group and realized there was a lot of like-minded people, and we were all in the same place and all saying somebody should do something. And I'm not good with somebody should do something. I'm like, I'll do it. Okay, give it to me. So and like I say, it was a team effort. There were about a half dozen of us, including Anne Lewis, Maria Rivera, Arthur Powers. Those are the names that come immediately to mind. And we just sat down and figured out, how do we make this work?
Gosh. Began with a scribbler's scrum. and then it went forward and forwarder. Now, here's a question that I'm sure a lot of people have in mind. Suppose you think you've got a manuscript. You hope it counts as a manuscript. What should you do?
Oh.
You haven't published anything yet. You never thought you'd publish anything ever. And yet,
okay, so
there it is, sitting on your desk. Right. And it should be launched.
Well, okay, so the first thing that you need to do is, if it's already written and finished, then you need to polish it. You need to have it critiqued. You need to get an editor. You need to do the self-editing, and you need to understand how the story works in general, like how your genre tells stories, or nonfiction. If you're doing some kind of a devotional or how-to, you need to understand how that works and make sure that your book is following that. Because there's a certain form that most people expect when they pick up this kind of a book that gives you complete freedom within it. And you can even break the rules if you're good enough, but you need to understand what you're doing. So make sure that manuscript is well polished. Now, the Guild can help you with that. We have crit groups, we have editors, we have threads where you can brainstorm, you can put up a portion of your work and say, hey, what do you think about that? And we've also got plenty of places where you can just ask advice. The next thing that you need to do after that, and while you're doing this, don't wait until you're ready to publish. While you're doing this, you need to get out in the world. You need to market. That means you need to have a website. You need to have social media. You need to start thinking about a newsletter and start getting people interested in you as a writer and in your book. And it can't just be you as a friend. Family and friends can only go so far in selling your book. You need to get out there and get people interested in what you have to say, not just who you are as a person. And again, we have plenty of people who have some expertise in this area who are glad to give advice. We have air conferences always talk about certain areas of marketing. I mean, it switches up every year, but you can always find something about social media, something about newsletters, something about setting up your platform as an author. If you're getting traditionally published, publishers want your platform. If you're self-publishing, you're going to want your platform, because otherwise your books are just going to sit in Amazon and do nothing. So polishing and getting that marketing. And then you need to have the connections if you're going to pitch. You can always mail or email submissions to different publishers by following their guidelines and things, but a lot of times they're closed. Catholic Writers Guild brings in publishers who let you skip that slush pile. The slush pile is where you send in your manuscript or your query letter, and it sits in their email along with 500 other ones that they'll get to eventually. But if you come to our conferences, you can talk to them directly for 7 minutes about your book. And like I said, we have launched careers through those pitch sessions. It's been great. But say it's not a manuscript that you have, just you want to do articles, you want to blog, you're trying to actually make money, because I'm sorry, most book writers aren't making a paid living. We post for jobs, we offer advice, and there's so many ways as a writer that you can make money. I mean, I'm making money doing business writing, which is not Catholic, but it's paying my bills, which is nice. And then I do the rest kind of as a hobby. So that would be the other thing I would say is manage your expectations. Because that can lead you to a world of frustration.
What if, just supposing, you are, and you know it, thin skinned?
Better thicken it up, baby. Because if you want to get better, you've got to be able to take the advice, even if it's hard. I'll give you an example. We have one author in our crit group, and he's been working on the same story for years, bringing it up again and again, just the first chapter. And we keep coming to him. This isn't right. This doesn't work. You're not getting it here. This week, he turned in the most amazing thing. I was so excited. And that's because he didn't let his feelings get hurt and pull away. Right? Now, granted, your feelings can get hurt and you can go away and you can cuss and you can pray and you can say, God, why is this happening to me? And you can feel hurt, but then you come back to the work and you do that work and you make it better, because that's how you learn. That's how you grow. If you have a thick skin once it's published, don't read your reviews. It is not necessary to read your reviews. Or if you just feel compelled, just go to Amazon and search only for your 5 and 4 star reviews, if that's what you need to feel better. But here's the thing. Your book is not going to be for everybody. I don't care how good it is. So you can take a critique or a bad review as a personal attack, and I do have friends where the attacks have been personal. Generally not in the Catholic world, but more in the secular world where there's politics involved. But most of the time, you just have to look at it and go, hey, that wasn't for me. And that's the same thing when a publisher rejects you. Most often, it's not because they don't like you or they don't like your book or it's just badly done, but it's not what they need. In which case, you say, okay, I'm going to go someplace else, and you just keep trying. It's an older story now, but Madeleine L'Engle, her famous book, A Wrinkle in Time, which has been made into 2 movies, is still a highly popular book, best-selling. It took her 8 years to find a publisher for that book. Not because it was a bad book, obviously. They just didn't know what to do with it. And when finally someone took a chance and it took off like gangbusters, she said she would go to conferences and publishers would say, how come you never sent that to us? And she would go, I did. So Sometimes it's wrong timing. Sometimes it's bad fit. If they come back and say, well, you need to have this looked at by an editor or run it through a quick group, then take their advice. But otherwise, don't let it get to you.
One
It's hard,
anecdote,
I know.
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead.
you know whereof you speak.
Yes.
Uh, you blame it on vampires, though.
No, I don't even write about vampires.
That's what they all say. Now, I have one anecdote, and then I'm going to turn the floor over totally to Valerie. Flannery O'Connor, over many years, had a close friend, and finally, the close friend said she was ready. She was going to submit a short story. And Flannery O'Connor said, have an envelope all ready to go with a cover letter so that you can, when you get your rejection, immediately send the manuscript to the next publisher.
Yes, in the early years, I did that. I actually did that.
Right. All right, Valerie.
Well, these are good stories. You guys, clearly this is a literary themed podcast. We have some good anecdotes going on here. I was just curious, following up, you talked about form, knowing the importance of knowing the form of what kind of genre of literature you're trying to put out there. And is there a simple place that you can go to get those forms? I mean, how does one sort of discover?
Oh. I don't think that there's like a website that does it. But you can Google, and now with ChatGPT, you can ask ChatGPT, what is the format for this kind of thing? What is the organization for this type of book? And you might be able to get a pretty good answer. The other thing to do is look at books that are similar to what you have. So this comes down to good writers are good readers. They read books in their genre. They read books outside their genre too, because then that broadens their experience and can inform their writing, make them a better writer. But reading inside your genre helps you to intuitively grasp the flow of a story, but you can also just sit down and map it out. So I do have friends that have done that, who have done critical analysis of a book where they go, this is the one that I want to be like. I've done it myself. I have a book called The Old Man in the Void, which was a challenge my husband gave me. He said, here, put this one in space. And it was Hemingway's The Old Man in the Sea. And I spent a good month studying The Old Man in the Sea, looking at cliff notes, reading the book, reading some reviews to see how he plotted out the story, where the rises and falls were. And then I went and I stuck it in a black hole. Instead of having just the man and his boat, the ship had an AI. The fish were alien ships from another dimension inside the black hole. Everything was different, but I followed that pattern, and it was amazing the difference that it made in that story.
So you don't just trade puns, you trade literary challenges. Challenges. It sounds like what a fun marriage.
It is. He is the best husband for a writer that there could possibly be.
What's his take on semicolons?
Sparing.
Well, at least he recognizes their pivotal importance.
As far as the forms go, are you in tune with what the market is wanting, not wanting, what kinds of forms are just saturated where you're going to have a hard time breaking into a particular type of literature, whereas they're real in the culture kind of desires for that you see that people have a need or a want to be filled by Catholic literature of some sort. You see any patterns?
Well, there's a saying in the writing. If you're trying to follow the trend, it's already too late.
Okay.
They trying to think out where to go from there.
Yeah.
There are expectations. Like romances have a happily ever after. But and certain tropes, there's always the boy meets girl, one likes the other, something's keeping them apart, then some crisis happens that puts them together and they realize how much they care about each other. And then usually there's something happens and they split again and then come back in the end for their big decision that we love each other forever. What you do within that is huge. All right, going back to Madeleine L'Engle, she said it's like a sonnet. There's a certain way that you have to do the form, or else it's not a sonnet. But what you do in that form is vast. The only limit is your imagination. And I feel that's the same way with writing. So there are certain expectations that you need to keep. Now, if you're really good, you can break those and it can be amazing. Look at the Harry Potter books. One of the things that held J.K. Rowling back is the size of those, because publishers said no child will read a book this big. It's just too big. When finally someone took the chance on her, guess what? She's good enough that they kept on reading. So
Yeah.
So the
So there's no good
amount
way to
of rules you
predict.
can break is proportional to the level of your skill.
Yeah, that makes sense. And really, too, as far as what direction to go in terms of trends or whatever, that probably also is dependent on how good are you at this or that or the other thing. If you're good enough.
Yeah.
That
Well, and
last
how fast too, because publishing, especially traditional publishing, this is not they're gonna take my book and it'll be out in a few months. Most of the time you're talking about a year's long process.
Mhm.
By then the trend can change.
Yeah. My last follow-up question was just, is there a cost to belong to the guild, or how do you do that? Is
The
there a
guild
membership?
is $40 a year. And with that, you get discounts on the online conference, discounts on the live conference, discounts on the retreats. And one of the projects we're working on this year is to try and get additional monetary type benefits, like people who will give a discount on their class or on their coaching or on their editing if you are a member of the guild. So it really does pay for itself. And we try to keep that as low as possible for that reason. And that's because we know that Catholic writers are moms and dads with big families. They're people who are interested in doing the good work as opposed to doing the high paying. Now, there are some who, are doing the good work and getting well paid, and that's fine too. But we know that there are a lot of people that that $40 seems like it might not be much, but it's still a big deal. So we try to keep that price down, but we're also trying to keep the quality high.
Awesome. Yeah, that seems very reasonable.
Now, the Guild is serious about core Catholic values.
Yes.
How is it that you advance them? How is it that you promote them?
Well, obviously by helping our writers to develop the skills that they can write the books that come from our values and get those out in the world where people are going to enjoy them. But in internally, we can support each other. We can educate and enlighten each other. I mean, that we have discussion groups about Catholic topics. We have where people can ask questions. Incidentally, we have in our Heartbeat chat, we have a section that's open to non-members, even non-Catholics, if they want to come and join the fellowship, ask questions about writing, about faith, what have you. And of course, we pray for each other. So one of the most active threads in our Heartbeat chat is the prayer request group.
A good many Catholic intellectuals, theologians slash philosophers. Theologians are always trying to slash the philosophers. A good many of them, I guess going back to von Balthasar, but certainly you find this in Benedict XVI, and you find it very, very strongly in the contemporary poet James Wilson. Talk about the focus on beauty as being critical in evangelization today. And Solzhenitsyn, in his address on winning the Nobel Prize in Literature, referenced the classical triad of the true, the good, and the beautiful. And he said, the true falls prey to propaganda, the whole business of you have your truth and I have my truth. And the good is so oftentimes distorted. But beauty is hard to deny. Do you find yourself in your discussions looking to the multiple questions of beauty and how to bring beauty to readers and how to create the beautiful?
Well, I don't know that. I mean, we often talk about the good, the true, and the beautiful, especially like in crit groups and things. But I think that a lot of times, maybe because we're dealing in words as opposed to image, when we talk about the beautiful, we're talking about the prose. How well does it inspire? How understandable is it? How clear is it? How well does it carry someone through the story and evoke the emotions that we want them to understand the characters are feeling in that scene? So it's for us, I think it's more an issue of the skill is the writing. So there are probably others in the chats that might talk more about that in a theological / philosophical sense. But for me, I'm in the more practical. So.
Well, you're showing beauty rather
We
than
do. That's
you're
yeah.
showing it. You're showing
Yeah.
it.
Well,
Valerie?
that's what we're always saying. You got to show it, not tell it.
Yep.
So, Catholic literature, Catholic books, what makes a book or a piece of literature Catholic? For instance, some people can't stomach Flannery O'Connor that I know. Some people may, well, is Graham Greene, a Catholic author? I mean, what makes something distinctively Catholic in your How would you articulate?
Well, speaking in terms of the Guild, we define a Catholic author or Catholic book as a book that is written by a Catholic that upholds our core beliefs. It doesn't necessarily have to have what you might call the trappings of our faith, like someone going to mass or confession. In fact, we have this wonderful Catholic science fiction book called Mark Maker by Mary Woods. It's available on Chrism. And it's completely aliens, takes place on an alien ship, absolutely nothing having to do with humans as far as Earthlings. But it is a deeply Catholic book about sacrifice, about conscience, about the impact of one's actions. Then going on the completely other side, you might have Tony Kolenc and his Harwood Mysteries, which are deeply within the Catholic world. They take place with an orphan solving mysteries, and he was in a monastery, and the monks were raising him. So there is a whole range about what a Catholic book is. But I think the core is that if you are a Catholic, you're going to be able to look at it and you're going to say, yeah, that's me, that's my beliefs, that's my experience. If you're not, then that's going to make a more subliminal impact on you. And that is perfectly fine too, because it's the show, not tell. We don't always have to say, oh, I'm Catholic! Listen to the Catholic! Yeah. Sometimes you can just show the beauty of what this means. And show the pain and the triumph and the struggle, because there's beauty in that too. And as Catholics, we understand that.
Mm-hmm. So it's more the word incarnate than the word itself. Incarnate, embodied in this, right?
Yes, I like that.
So the core values, of course, how do you define the core values, the core Catholic values in your, you say
the magisterium defines them for us.
Okay. So when you say that you kind of vet Catholic literature for bookstores, that would be one of the criteria, is just that it doesn't oppose magisterial teaching, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
That's great.
Just yesterday, I don't know if it's trending or not, but I saw it. It's in the self-help genre. And it was actually an op-ed in the NY Times, a publication that I wrestle with every single morning, on multitasking and how to avoid it, and how, in fact, you can't multitask. In fact, you can only do one thing at a time. And what multitasking really amounts to is changing your task.
Yeah, switch task.
Every other minute. Changing your task every other minute.
Yep.
And the editorialist, the op-editorialist said, changing your task every other minute is like filling up a whiteboard and then immediately erasing it, and then trying to fill it up with something different, and then immediately erasing that, and then trying to fill it up with something different. And it's brain busting. It's a brain busting thing. And you can only really multitask if one of the tasks is practically second nature to you.
Mm-hmm.
Then you
this is an old theory.
Then you could maybe get away with it. Now, one of the reasons why we allegedly multitask is we spend so much time on our screens. And among other things, if you're spending too much time on your screen and you don't pick up your feet, you you'll have a broken screen because it'll fall on cement. Now, what I'm getting at, bit by bit, is does internet life so reduce our capacity to attend to the matter at hand that our ability to write and our ability to read is damaged?
Well, I've got 500 writers who will tell you that, yes, you can write and be part of internet. But I agree that it's definitely changed how we read, how we review, how we think even. And I would not go, though, so far as to say it's damaged. It's changed. And because of that change, it's put pressure on writers. We have to make more immersive stories. We have to get to the point sooner. We can't just ramble around and go off on a lot of tangents because, as Bob Ed notes and others, that attention span has gotten shorter. The video game culture has done this too. We want immediate results, and if not, we're willing to change and try again or do something else. It's changed the structure of our writing a little bit. In fact, I'm working on revising one of my novels, Mind Over Mind. It's out of print now. I've got the rights back. I'm going to pitch it to an agent, and it was written in the 2000s. I have to go back and reword some, and also I need to cut down the paragraphs because even in a book form, most readers don't want a paragraph that's a page long because their eyes just want to scroll over that and they lose the details. So you got to cut those paragraphs. So, but the thing we have to remember is that tastes and styles change, even without the technology. I mean, in the 19th century, authors were more verbose. They had elaborate vocabularies. They could spend 2 pages describing the cows in the field, and that was delightful. In the 20th century, language is more straightforward. There was a departure from linear narratives. Author voice grew. It became more diverse. And there was more of a reader-author relationship. They were expecting the reader to pull more. And as a result, the reader was challenged to get more out of the book from themselves without having to be told. So there was also a move from highly moral kind of tales because you were expected to pull that moral for yourself. Now the internet's pushing us to be even more straightforward, to get more to the point. This particularly in nonfiction. We're also a little more casual in how we speak because, again, if there's a brevity in the casualness. But it's also given us a greater diversity of voices, and that's a good thing. It's also set a much higher standard for accuracy because you can be reading something in a book and go, is that right? And here's that switch tasking thing. Now I must know if it's right. I'm going to go to the internet and look it up. Ooh, look, there's a YouTube video on it. Oh, hey, there's a cat video. And then you've lost it. You've lost them from your book. So you better make sure you have things right, or if you're wrong, that you're being exciting enough in your wrongness. I have a funny story with one of my friends, Larry Correa, not Catholic. He's Mormon, but he writes the best books. They're about fighting monsters, and he has this readership that's super intelligent and also highly technical. He had a scene where his orc was hovering a helicopter over an aircraft carrier and the people were jumping down. He actually had people go on his Facebook page and go, you can't do that with a Black Hawk. And then they went, oh, but you know, it was an orc flying, so I guess that makes the difference. So, if you can tell the story well enough, people will move past that. But it's always
Mhm.
better to be accurate because you can. Another thing that, again, with the attention span, uh, is that we're starting to see a return to shorter fiction and to serial stories. Those were big at the turn of the 20th century. And now we're starting to see it again with Substack and Vella, where you can draw your audience in by doing, a couple thousand words at a time, and they're coming back if your story's good enough.
That's a very interesting point.
Mhm.
Now, personally, I feel like I have lost some of my capacity in my attention span. And I think that we're seeing a rise in ADHD because the computer does encourage that kind of switch tasking with
Mhm.
pop-ups and alerts and all of that kind of thing. And we we've lost the art of ignoring things. I mean, it used to be if you didn't want to talk to somebody, you just took your phone off the hook and you could concentrate for hours, and the expectation was there that, oh, I'll just call them back later. Now, it, in the early years of Blackberries, my husband and I had this argument all the time because it was a leash. And because it was a leash, there were no work hours. Now, granted, he was a military man. He retired as a colonel in the Air Force. So, granted, there were times when you really should be at beck and call at a minute's notice, but not because it's 10 o'clock at night and I had a thought about this report you turned in.
Right.
But now we're all used to that. We've lost our boundaries. So, we have to you have to have your own self-discipline, and you have to learn how to enforce that with others. So, and I say this as a huge switch tasker. Before the meeting today, I edited an article, then looked up about 20 links to put on the guild website, and jumped back and forth between emails, and then got the alarm for this meeting. So, yeah, I accomplish a lot. I don't do as much deep work as I used to.
Yeah. I'm curious, who are some of the contemporary Catholic writers you think that we should become familiar with
All
that we're
right,
reading right
so we
now?
want fiction or nonfiction? I made a list.
All right, whichever you feel most inclined.
Okay, so
Or a
since
little
I
familiar.
am a fiction writer, and that's where my true love is, I'm going to introduce you to some of those first. So if you like um, science fiction that tends toward the more literary, the deep world building, that kind of thing, I would say Colleen Drippe, Drippe. Her Star Brothers series is it's way far, almost soap opera level science fiction because it's that far in the future, where there are it's an order of Star Brothers who are evangelizing to the lost colonies throughout the Galactic Empire. Closer to home and a little more fun is Karina Turner. She's from England, and she writes dinosaur fiction in a dystopic world, and it's fully Catholic. They're amazing, and she has a whole series. They're young adult, but they're great for adults too. I already mentioned Tony, and he does the historical mysteries. Karen Ullo, writes horror and historical fiction. Her latest that came out was To Crown with Liberty. And even though she was in our sci-fi crit group, she asked if she could run that one by, and it's purely historical. There's no science fiction or fantasy involved. It was amazing, and we all loved it, even if it wasn't our genre. Amanda Lawrence, Ellen Gable, her cash writes literary. I think it's under Ellen Gable. Romance is Maddie Evans. And her alter ego, Jane Lieback, writes science fiction about angels doing the work of God, and those are really good. Regina Delman writes chick lit and retold fairy tales, and those are a little bit older, but they really hold up. They're good stuff. The late John Desjardins writes mysteries, police procedurals with a private detective. Mark Baker writes fantasy. And then for a real left turn, Matthew Schmidt writes lit RPG. So big range there of the kinds of fiction that you can find with Catholic writers. And a lot of those, I've had the honor of critiquing or beta reading, and it's amazing how good they are. I'm just very impressed. And that's been one of the nice things too about the internet, is that with self-publishing, small presses and that kind of thing, you can get such a bigger variety of books, but you have to know where to look. All right, nonfiction. One of my favorites is Margaret Rose. She is a Guild success story because she came to us saying, I'm not a writer. I don't really know how to write, but I want to learn. And she now has a half dozen books with some of the big Catholic publishers, and they're about gardening.
Oh.
About Catholic gardening. So
can you say her last name again? I think there might have been a
really, Realy. Yeah. So, but we've got Jean Hyman, Michael Seagriff, Maria Gallagher, Devin Rose, and a bunch of Heidi Hess Saxton. Gosh, who else? I just had the list of names up. Hang on. Right here. One of my favorite. Lisa Mladnick. She has a fabulous one for women that are a little bit older. I can't remember the title of it right now. And then, Pat Gone. I loved this book. Blessed, Beautiful, and Bodacious. That was just a fun book about women's spirituality. So like I said, nonfiction's generally not my wheelhouse, but that one I loved it. So,
what about publishers? Tell us about some of the publishers y'all work with.
Okay, well, we have some wonderful relationships with some of the major Catholic publishers: Pauline, Marian, OSV, Ave Maria. They always come to our conferences to hear pitches. A lot of times they present as well, which is fantastic. And they've been some of the ones who are central to launching the careers of some of our writers, and not because they're doing charity work. I mean, these are just great fits, and it's wonderful to see. So every year they're excited to come back. We also, in the fiction side, and not always Catholic. Sometimes we have some like En Route Media that and Elk Lake that aren't specifically Catholic, but are very open to Catholic books. And I think that's important too, is to realize that we don't have to necessarily go to a Catholic publisher in order to get our books out there. Then Full Quiver Press is a Catholic publisher with a specialty in right to life issues. Chrism Press is very much genre fiction. And they're relatively new on the scene, but they're making a big splash.
Awesome. Jim, what's your final?
It's a different sort of thing, but a publisher that I'm deeply interested in is Cluny, as in CLUNY, Monastery Connection. and they do only, I shouldn't say reprints, because they do the book all over again of books that have gone out of print. And it's just a great, great publishing house. Well, I got one last question for you, and then we'll end with the gospel for the day. What are you writing right now? In outer space, inner space, or somewhere in between?
Okay, well, I am.
Oh, there it is.
I'm revising this one. This is the one that just went out of print, and I'm going to send it to an agent to see if I can get it done. It's called Mind Over Mind. It's about a psychic whose abilities drive him insane, and the psychiatric hospital intern that helps him find his way back to sanity. And in the end, he realizes he's communicating with aliens. He has to save their world, and all kinds of great fun.
Wow.
And yeah, so then the new one that I'm working on, book 8 in my Dragon Eye series, which is about a dragon that works for the church and has been brought into our universe to save the world from where magic and technology are not working. He can do really noirish kind of mystery stuff, and then sometimes he's truly slapstick. The last book was Vern versus Godzilla. This time I'm doing a superhero spoof where one of the mundanes, which is what us humans are, goes to the fairy realm, falls in a vat of toxic waste, gets bitten by a radioactive pixie, and gets superpowers. And Vern has to basically train him up so that he isn't a menace. So I'm working on that one. And then totally outside the Catholic realm, I write a long-running series of Star Trek type parodies in my own universe. It's called Space Traipse Hold My Beer. And basically it's rednecks in space with Federation style starships and that kind of thing. And so I am working on the next story collection for that.
And yet, looking at your background, everything is neat, orderly. And because of the effort to maintain that orderliness, you have to escape. You have to escape into space. That's the only explanation. And you're not showing us the desk, but the desk that you.
No, the desk is a complete
desk,
mess.
A clean desk is the sign of it's a sign of a lot of things.
Yes.
All right.
I do find in order to have the craziness of my worlds, I have to have order in my life. So, yes.
Well, we have, truth be told, strangest of strange worlds right now. In order to ground ourselves in this strange world, we have to look to the fundamental order of revelation. And we always end every one of our programs with the gospel for the day. And this is from John. Jesus then said to the Jews who had believed in him, if you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. They answered him, we are descendants of Abraham and have never been in bondage to anyone. How is it that you say you will be made free? Jesus answered them, truly I say to you, everyone who commits sin is a slave of sin. The slave does not continue in the house forever. The Son continues forever. So if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed. I know that you are descendants of Abraham, yet you seek to kill me because my word finds no place in you. I speak of what I have seen with my Father, and you do what you have heard from your father. They answered him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would do what Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth, which I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You do what your father did." They said to him, "We were not born of fornication. We have one Father, even God." Jesus said of them, "If God were your Father, you would love me, for I proceeded and came forth from God. I came not of my own account, but he sent me." Come, Lord Jesus, come.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Karina.
Ah, it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed this.
All right.
Super great
Godspeed with
information.
your work.
Yeah.
Godspeed with your work.
Yeah, and all
Thank
the
you.
work of all the writers in the guild.
Yeah.
500.
Nice to learn about
500. And
nice to learn about what's new.
if anybody wants to join us, it's catholicwritersguild.org.
Perfect. Glad you shared that. Thank you. We'll have fun in your worlds and in
I
ours.
will.
Why don't you make a little mess over there in the corner of your room? Just to...
I have
It'd make
enough
me
on my
feel better.
desk.
We didn't even discuss that creature up there with the ears, I guess.
Huh? This?
No, the big one. The big
Well,
one.
this is Mucutus. This is my mascot, Laser Cow. I self-published. It's Laser Cow Press. And this is Bird.
Barb?
Gotta be careful of that one.
That's my dragon.
All right.
What
Take
fun.
care.
All right. God bless you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.